we're gonna do a way too early Nightreign class ranking list because I can, so why not? Now, I do not foresee that the classes that I played with in the network test are going to end up being the final product. They'll probably end up getting a little bit of a balancing tweak, and we definitely have not seen every single relic ability as well, because there are some specific passive buffs that you get off the relics that will boost certain classes. But for today, we are going to rank the 4 that I did play with in the network test: the Wilder, Guardian, Duchess, Recluse. We do also know about the Iron Eye, which is going to be the bow and arrow based class, and from the trailers it does look like we might get like a deflecting type of class, and I'm willing to bet we'll end up getting like an incantation or healer type of class too. There also were some rumors out there about getting a summoning class. Not sure how true that one is though. But the criteria is going to be obviously based on how powerful the classes are and how well it can perform in a team as well, because that is really important. Now, before we do get started, I want to talk about a fashion contest that I am going to be hosting. Yes, another one. If you are unsure as to how these work, basically I just summon the viewers on stream, and then I will just run some polls in chat, and the viewers actually help vote as to who will end up being the winner. I did make a highlights video based on my last fashion contest, so you can go check that video out if you do want to know a bit more as to how it does work. I'll just link it down below. But as for this next fashion contest that I will be hosting over the weekend, to enter it or find out information, you have to join the Discord, which that will also be linked down below. So if you are a person that has some amazing fashion that you do want to share, definitely do join the contest. To start off at the bottom, we have the Guardian, which is the tanking based class. And the thing is, tanking doesn't really work that well in this game, as I will get into. But this class, out of all the other ones, does get the highest amount of health and stamina. And at max level, it ends up getting roughly 25% more health than the Wilder class, which honestly isn't really too big of a difference if you're going to be marketed as a tanking based class. Especially because there are plenty of passive buffs that you can come by that will actually increase your HP or give you like 15% damage negation. And equipping these on a class like the Wilder can end up turning you into more of a tank than the Guardian can. And unfortunately, they decided to have a trade-off for getting really good health and stamina and having a really bad dodge, because it just does not go that far at all, and it feels a lot more clunky than all the other dodges. Like, it genuinely feels like doing a heavy roll when playing Elden Ring. So even though you get the most health, if you're missing your dodges half the time, you're not really doing the best job at survivability. And in terms of its abilities, there are some things that it can do well, but I definitely believe that every single one of these need to get buffed, starting off with its passive ability, Steel Guard, which when clicking the block and the dodging button at the same time, it does give you this like unique blocking animation that lets you tank a bunch more damage. So it can make it to where you just stand still and just tank a whole bunch of bosses combos while your other teammates can just like wail on the enemy. But the thing is, when it comes to enemies aggroing to certain enemies, they're going to go to the person that's actually hitting them. And if you're a person that's going to be blocking the entire time, it doesn't really do much, especially against larger bosses that have like really wide hitboxes or do those like really large AoEs. Trying to stand in front of your enemies and blocking is basically going to be doing nothing. So what I would like for this ability to do instead is to have it to where enemies just like naturally get aggroed towards you when you do have the blocking ability up. Also have it to where the shield hitbox gets extended to be out very far as well. That would be nice too. In terms of its main character skill in Whirlwind, it does summon this little tornado that sends these smaller enemies flying into the air, which can be good at stun locking groups of trash mobs. But in this game, there are going to be lots of larger bosses that you have to fight against, and this skill is practically useless because the damage really isn't that good. Doesn't really do that good a stance damage either. So one thing that I would like to see if you are going to double down into a tanking based class is to also have this ability like debuff enemies to make it do a bit less damage. And as for its ultimate art, Wings of Salvation, this one is actually really good. You can like jump up high into the air and come crashing down in a massive AoE that can do some nice damage. It could probably use like a bit of a damage buff, but the fact that it does do it in a nice AoE, has some nice tracking, means that it's not only going to be good at killing some trash mobs or killing bosses, but also good at reviving your allies as well. And upon landing onto the ground, you actually can buff your allies with a bit more damage negation. So I think the ultimate art is like really good. It probably could use like a slight damage buff, but I definitely think the passive ability and the character skill are definitely in need of more love to make this feel more like a tanking based class, because it doesn't really do much else that's special. Now in terms of some other things that the Guardian does do, it gets a unique halberd moveset that gets a bunch of poking attacks, which honestly feels a bit slower than like the regular poking attack halberd moveset. So I'd definitely like to see this one get a bit of a speed increase and also have like a speed increase to like great spears and heavy thrusting swords too. Now in terms of the relic abilities that are specific to the Guardian, we only really know of one, and that is damage negation boost to your allies when you do use a character skill, which that one is actually really good. And if you are going to be running the Guardian, this is probably going to be a must-have to make it feel more like a tanking-based class and actually help out your allies. So it does do a handful of things pretty well, but I definitely feel like out of all the classes we had to play with, this one needs the most love. Now, it's number 3, we have the Recluse, which is your mage or sorcery type of class, and this one actually getting the least amounts of health and stamina compared to all the other classes. Like, this class gets almost half the amount of health as the Guardian gets. So definitely this class is limited when it does come to team composition. You almost always want to have like a Guardian or a Wilder with you when you do run the Recluse, because the playstyle is obviously having those characters just be able to be at melee distance and absorb some of the damage and the aggro, so you can just like freely spam your spells over and over again. Now there are plenty of really good abilities that the Recluse does get that helps complements the spell casting system, but I still wish it were a bit better, because using the spells on the Recluse still very much feels like using the spells on other types of classes. It would have been cool if like the casting based classes would just have a speed increase when it comes to using the spells, or even the ability to have more than 2 spells equipped at the same time and not have to toggle between many different types of catalysts, because it can get frustrating sometimes if you just want to use more than 2 different spells, and it gets especially annoying when the game doesn't really tell you which button is for which spell on the actual screen itself. Now the main ability that the Recluse does get is being able to absorb different types of elemental damage, and this can be done after hitting an enemy with this particular element. So say if you hit an enemy with like some magic damage source, you can go ahead and absorb that, and upon absorbing that you do gain a little bit of FP, and it does fill in one of your 3 circles, and if all 3 circles are filled with any different type of element, it will do a particular attack or a buff. I'm not going to get into and break every single combination down, but you will end up getting a mixture of like projectile attacks, AoE attacks, you'll get like a healing based spell, you can get a spell that actually automatically parries enemies, there'll even be a damage negation spell, some tracking spells too. Now for the most part, the ones that have a mixture of elements will be the ones that are typically better and just do more damage. For instance, going with lightning, fire, and magic does this massive AoE gravity explosion attack, or going with holy fire and lightning does this massive lightning AoE attack. So I think typically you want to probably aim towards these ones if you want to maximize your damage, which is definitely going to be hard just trying to have 3 different sources of damage to constantly try and absorb over and over again. So that's why team composition and knowing what your teammates have is going to be very important when it does come to the Recluse. In terms of its ultimate ability, it is Soul Blood Song. That does put like a little bit of a debuff on nearby enemies that lasts roughly 10 seconds, and upon hitting them, you'll regain your HP and your FP for every single hit. Now this obviously does extend to spells, and for some spell combinations, it can just be broken. Specifically, if you go grab the Lusat staff, it will come with Stars of Ruin, and you can spam Stars of Ruin over and over again, especially if some of your allies have retained the aggro of a boss, and you can literally get your ultimate ability back extremely quickly. So I think when it does come to the skill ceiling of this character, it can be pretty high, but it definitely can be the most broken class to use. And that's because of one particular relic that you can get with the Recluse, and that is for every single time that you use your main character ability, it casts Terra Magica on the ground for free. Like every single time that you use it, it's just going to be free Terra Magica, which when standing inside of this pool, that is 35% more magic damage. So honestly, any single time that you're building around the Recluse, this is going to be a relic that you must get. It might be a bit rough to use early game because obviously your damage is not going to be that good. You're not going to have much FP or much health. And the fact that there aren't many reliable ways to regenerate your FP, it might be a bit of a problem too. But once your entire build comes together, it could definitely be one of the most broken ones. Number 2, we have the WYLDER, which I think that this is the most complete class out of all the ones that we did get to play with. There's almost nothing that I would change about this class. If you just wanted a character that was very easy to pick up, but did have a pretty high skill ceiling, I would use this one. If I wanted to carry my teammates or play solo, this would probably be the class that I use as well, because it does get some very balanced stats. You get a decent amount of health, stamina, and FP. And all of its abilities are just amazing. The only downside that I could say about the WYLDER is that it doesn't really have anything to help complement your other teammates. Whereas for the other classes that I've talked about, there's always been at least like 1 or 2 abilities that help buff your allies as well. Whereas the WYLDER doesn't really do anything like that. But it's just like a solid overall class. And if you really do want to help out your allies, there are going to be plenty of relic abilities out there that could do that anyway. But as for its passive ability, you have Sixth Sense, which can literally cheat death a single time. Kind of like Denial or Tears of Denial from the previous Dark Souls games, and that instead of actually dying and going to 0 HP, it just leaves you at 1 HP. But this can only happen once per game, so you practically just get like a get out of jail free card just for every single time that you play. Its main character skill is Claw Shot, which is practically a grappling hook that can like pull smaller enemies in towards you. Against larger enemies, you can like go towards them. You can use it to traverse the map pretty quickly. It's also good at guard breaking as well. It's such a versatile type of skill. It means you can close in the gap and just get in as much damage as possible. You can retreat quickly and set up your positioning. And also, it's just extremely fun. Now, one of the downsides that I did initially have with the grapple hook is that when you actually grappled into an attack, it didn't really do that much more damage than like a regular running attack. But thankfully, there actually is a relic ability that lets you get a unique fire follow-up attack. That is specifically if you do have the greatsword class only, but it definitely makes this character feel a lot cooler. And as for its ultimate art in Onslaught stake, it is like some big close range, just heavy hitting fire-based AoE attack, which is kind of similar to like the Pile Bunker and Armored Core, or the stake driver in Bloodborne. It just hits like an absolute truck, and it basically stance breaks every single enemy in just this one hit. Now, typically when it comes to these close range types of attacks, they're going to be very risky to use, but in this game, every single ultimate just gives you infinite iframes, so it just feels amazing. Against like really quick types of enemies, there might end up being a chance that you do miss, but it also just complements the character perfectly because it can like send enemies flying or can like knock you backwards really far, but then you have your grapple hook attack that you can just go directly into it and end up getting the critical attack, which that just feels amazing. You can also grapple hook into the ultimate. You can also jump while using the ultimate too. The character also does get a unique greatsword combo. That does feel a little bit faster than like the regular greatsword attacks. I would like it if a few more different classes like the twin blades or curved greatswords will end up getting a boosted moveset when using the Wilder as well, and having these weapon types also get boosted by the fire-based relic ability. But yeah, I think this is like the most complete class and is extremely fun, and if you were a beginner playing this game for the first time, I'd recommend us using the Wilder. And that's number 1, we have the Duchess, which this character is pretty much broken because of this one particular ability in general. But this is like a small, nimble type of character, doesn't really have much health at all, only a little bit more than the Recluse. Even gets just as much stamina as well. Now, typically when you are using the Recluse, you probably want to use these smaller, quicker types of weapons to really benefit. It does give you like a unique dagger combo that does come out really fast. And for this character, you're more likely than not want to go spec into like a status effect type of build because you're not going to really get much damage overall due to its pretty mediocre like damaging based stat scalings. Other classes when using melee based weapons are just going to end up getting you more damage. And obviously when it comes to status effects, these are just going to do percentage damage and just help you out so much more, especially when you are using its main character skill in Arrestage, which this is kind of like a time ability that does make the enemies take like the past few seconds worth of damage just all over again. Now it's not exactly the 100% worth of damage, it's kind of more like 50% of the damage they're taking over again, but that's still like 50% more damage. And I think 50% more stance damage and status effect build up too. But obviously the major benefit is if you see like your enemies like pop an ultimate ability, or if you end up getting a status effect proc on a boss, then you just like use the skill, which resets once every 12 seconds, which is extremely good. And you can melt bosses faster with this particular setup more so than anything else in the game. Like it's pretty much stronger than almost every ultimate ability, it's just that good. But as for the rest of its abilities, it does get the passive one in Magnificent Pose that does let you get like these dodging attacks in the middle of your dodge. Like the recovery frames before attacking are extremely small. And you also get the ability to like double dodge, which does make you a pretty hard target to hit sometimes, which can actually help counteract the fact that you're just not going to have much health. And as for your ultimate ability in Finale, it lets you and your nearby allies just become invisible, which obviously is extremely good when it comes to like stealth-based combat and potentially getting some backstabs off, which there are plenty of abilities out there that actually help you just get specific types of buffs when getting critical attacks. But it also is going to be really good when it comes to reviving your allies and just even in the middle of a boss fight, because like there'll be a lot of bosses that just don't even see you when you have this skill active. Even if you do hit them, they will just never be aggroed. So yeah, the entire base kit of the Duchess is just extremely good. And almost any single time that you are running an expedition, you probably want to have at least 1 or 2 Duchesses on your team just to be able to spam the Restage ability over and over again, because you'll just end up melting everything. Anyway, that is the video now done and completed. As always, let me know what your opinions are down in the comments below. I'll probably end up making one more Nightreign related video based on the network test, which if you do want to see my others, I will just have them linked down below. But outside of that, we won't really be making any more Nightreign content until the actual full game gets released. So definitely do subscribe for that. Anyway, catch you guys around. Bye.